Okay, so I've got to do two things at once, press the enter key and use a microphone. That's going to be tricky. I'd like to warn you, I will fall off the stage at least once during this talk. Also, I appear to be the guy who's here to show you that Windows laptops are still a thing. Okay, here's a few fun facts about me. The point of these is to show you that there's nothing really special about me. If you follow me on Twitter, I'll have more than 3 followers. I do APIs. I'm a back-end developer. This talk that we're about to deliver is a stripped-down version of an internal talk and workshop. It takes around 90 minutes. We have 30. I have taken out a whole bunch of IP. I can see the time. Thank you very much, Tim. That's good. What I'm going to do, this does get quite dry, so there is code, or rather method signatures. We also have serialization mechanisms. I will move very, very swiftly, or try to. If we get through and there's something you want to talk about, we can rewind. And if we don't get through, then they'll just hook me off the stage. So what am I doing here? Seeing as there's nothing particularly interesting going on, I have a big problem. I have a problem that we all share. Not specifically this one, although this is a problem that we all share, and that is really important, and we're going to have 4 very interesting years. And sorry about the politics being introduced into a technical talk, not usually a song guy. That's our CEO, and I'll get on to the real problem in a moment. I have to spend a little bit of time explaining what the problem is so you can see why we're using BDD and what it does. So that's the CEO of MYOB, and that's his reaction to the election. And we've all got some serious problems. And now, one interesting little fun fact about MYOB, we have significant shareholding from Bain Capital in the United States, which is actually Mitt Romney's investment vehicle. So if we're concerned about a Trump presidency, everybody should be. Okay? And there's a whole bunch of reasons for that. So MYOB, I'm not here to sell any MYOB stuff, but we do ledgers. So we have SME ledgers, we have tax practice management solutions, ERP, wholesale retail management, payroll, a bunch of platforms and other bits and pieces. What I've done here is I've dragged a bunch of icons that represent some of the tech stacks and teams that we use. As you can see, they are quite varied. We have an extraordinary collection of disparate entities spread from Christchurch to Perth. And basically MYOB acquires businesses and integrates them in. The whole point is I'm not dealing with, on one side, a unified tech stack. So we have Delphi.NET, Elixir, Phoenix, Java, JavaScript. And when I say JavaScript, those of you who know anything about it know that it's actually this huge conglomeration of different libraries and approaches. We have Ruby on Rails. We have Ruby servers that aren't on Rails. We have Scala, Jade. Has anyone heard of that? I didn't until recently. A whole bunch of databases and so on. So that's one side of our problem is this disparate set of grumpy little people. And we haven't shown any of the legacy systems that we've got, such as FoxPro, C++. We have an ISAM database in one product, and so on. This is the other side of the picture. So we're doing business with the Australian Tax Office and New Zealand IRD, Standard Business Reporting, the Digital Business Council, which is meant to be an industry initiative, but is actually the ATO, that's e-invoicing, Single Touch Payroll, SuperStream, all of these things. These affect anyone who works in Australia, and in New Zealand, they don't have as much money for logos, so I've only got the one on the screen, but they have Fast and Smart and Foxy and TORS, which is pause with a T, and it's the same thing. So if you're in New Zealand or you're in Australia and you get paid, you are dealing one way or another, or the people who are paying you and their software is dealing one way or another with these entities. So we have every year around 6.5 million documents. So these are reports and tax returns that go through our practitioner systems alone. We have around 200,000 ledgers, and we are bringing them on stream with SuperStream and Single Touch Payroll. If any of those things mean, it doesn't really matter. We're bringing payroll systems. So the payroll systems are a smaller number of sites, but they are very high volume. So these are payroll integrators that small businesses use in order to deal with their payroll stuff. So we're looking at, conservatively, 60 million documents. Not API interactions, but documents by financial year 2018. It's actually more like 100 million, but we're doing conservatively. Okay, so these are not little API calls. They're actual exchanges of significant information. And see all the fun facts. Okay, so every single piece, every single document, every single request is private, personal, privileged, confidential information. Right, so it has to be secured, it has to be fault tolerant, it has to not fail at any time, or we're out of business. All right. So back to the joke. So if Trump is the gold medal, world's most stupid, and Brexit is the silver medal, who's got the bronze medal? Right, and the answer is the agency. So what I've put up there is a bunch of acronyms. I've sized them according to the level of significance that we have in our lives. The point that I want to bring up, which is the most frightening for us, is those of you who are at all technical or know anything about APIs, you'd expect to see REST and JSON being the same size, because normally the JavaScript object notation and a simple HTTP API call go together, but that's not the case. So here's a little bit of code. All I want you to see here, and you don't need necessarily to understand it, is just how hideous it is. So the little red lines are the text editor furiously trying to understand what's going on here. What we have is a text plain MIME part in a multi-part related SOAP with attachments specification that has been sent using EBMS3 AS4 messaging. Okay, so in other words, an absolute disaster. What's happened at the top is you see what's called XML at the top, and then a little bit of XML underneath it, but with a great big red line, because that first XML tag has actually closed, so we have multiple XML root nodes. All you need to know is that that's bad. We can't serialize that. And then between the XML, I've got JSON. So I've got XML, JSON, XML, JSON, XML, JSON, XML, JSON, and it's a disaster. And you can't process this with in any consistent manner. The reason it's important to understand is it's not just gross stupidity. We do talk to the people, nearly fell off. We do talk to the people involved with this, and there are multiple teams, and every single one of those teams on the agency side made a rational decision in the context of the constraints and requirements that were placed upon it. But whatever, we have to deal with it. The point is, we don't want to have to deal with this kind of stuff every time differently for each of the teams that we have working on the other side of the pipe. So this is just sort of the approach you've got to take. You've just got to laugh at it and just move right along, right? Here's another example. So this is actually a lot calmer. This is a thing called XBRL. What you're looking at here is, in general speak, roughly what we're doing is we're delineating the playing field. We haven't told you what the rules are or put the players on the field yet. These are XML namespaces. This is a portion of them. I hope you can see in the corner there the scroll bar, and that thing goes down. What you're looking at is the preamble to a company tax return for the financial year 2016. It is a beast, right? So we have the matrix of doom, right? On the one side, we have MYOB products, so SME ledgers, practice management solutions, payroll, blah, 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 whole bunch of ledgers, right? On the other side, we have the government agencies that they need to talk to. Depending upon how you count them, we have it's something like 20 different potential interactions on the left, and we have, I don't know, 8, 10 interactions on the right. And you could multiply them all together, right, and get 200 different ways to integrate between agency and government. We just can't support that, right? And don't forget, everything has to be secure, fault tolerant, scalable, WDO. They want all the things, right? And it's not negotiable. So obviously we're going to BDD our way out of this, because otherwise I wouldn't be here, right? And the question is, where do you start, right? So on the one hand, I have domain professionals. So these are people who are really, really good at taking tax rules, payroll rules, strange laws, and not going completely crazy every year when they all change and so on. And on the other side, we've just got the contractors. Anyone here from IBM? Good. IBM is a 4-letter word. Okay, so what you need to do is you need to start somewhere, right? Or you're not going to be able to cope. So what we do is we look for a template, and there is a template in one of the programs. So one of the acronyms that I showed you on that screen before, SBR, they actually produce these things called Conformance Suites, right? And thank you very much. We don't want to be churlish about these guys. They have to do their job. We have to do their job. Everybody has to do it because we voted for the government that made these rules. So it's just it. So thank you very much. You just don't want to look too closely at these conformance suites. So the thing about these documents is they were created not by the business side of the ATO. They were created by technical teams. So the scenarios that they depict in the code that they present make no sense. They will validate, and that's it. But in things like a partnership tax return with a single partner, right? A trust tax return with a distribution, that kind of weird stuff, or a partnership tax return with 4 partners, each of whom has the same tax file number, which means person, right? That kind of thing, that validates, so they do it, but it won't work in any practice management solution. But anyway, we've got something to start with. We've got a template. So what we get is we get these little matrices, and it doesn't really matter what's up there, right? The idea is for the specific problem that you have to face, locate something like this to at least get a grip on the problem. So we've got like report names, services, who's involved, what time you need to get through the pipe, and a general description of it. And we have further descriptions a bit later on. They're quite dry and boring, and I don't want to look at them. Our BAs can look at them, so that's so let's get down to some Gherkin real fast. Now, I'm going to make an assumption that you guys are all familiar with that. If you're not, and you need to understand what the basic terminology is of what I'm about to show you, then just come and see me later. I'm sure there are other people here who are much better than me at explaining this stuff to you. So we start off with like a simple workflow. See how easy that is to see? Blast. I was a little bit concerned about whether that was going to be easy to see, but it's not. Thank you very much. So we have the given, when, then is arrange, act, assert, roughly, if that's how you like to think about it. It doesn't really matter how or what we're specifically doing in this stuff, but I'll show you we are able to send the test to a certain location. We have to set up these. We have to send a certain service. We want to get a certain response. And this is the only really part. And that's where the actual data is that goes in. And the point is that I have up to 20 different teams who all like to represent data in different ways, so I need to support them all. In this particular test case, we're looking at some JSON. We have a simple workflow. All we're doing is requesting a report and getting a response. The thing is, we can do variations. So what we have here is, this is an individual tax return, one of the most complicated reports that we handle, or try not to handle by looking at them. And what we've got here is we've got 2 different systems, 2 different client systems. So one of these systems is able to use XBRL to talk to us. BA is able to produce XBRL, and the other one is producing what's called an ELS tag file. It's just what they're familiar with. They don't want to have to understand what's going on the agency side. They just want to be able to give us, to construct their test cases. Remember that the test cases that the agency gives us are ridiculous. They need to be able to construct cases and execute them. So they need to do it in their own formats. And all the little words that you see around, it's actually the same test case, just happens in a different way. Then we have complex workflows. So this is where the results of a previous interaction with the agency affect the input to the next interaction with the agency. And the thing about the Gherkin script provides us with a domain-specific language that allows us the flexibility to handle all these different situations at once. And this one is a full API invocation. So once again, I'm just doing a test case just like the others, but this time I'm executing against a full AWS stack, and I'm using MYOB internal authentication. Okay, so things go wrong. So what is, if you look up in the corner, we've got that nice little tag. I'll tell you about the technology in a little while. So when we have the automation tools that run over this stuff, they pick up the tags and they decide whether or not to test. And what we've got there is we've got the ATO incident number, where we go, your system is broken and fix it, and that was about 6 months ago. Don't hold your breath. We have about 900 tests. We're actually approaching 1,000. This slide is a little bit old, okay? So what we've done, and this is what I can't show you because that stuff that before is something that it doesn't take, it's not rocket science. You can obtain those documents freely from the ATO and construct it yourself, and it's not like we're geniuses and thought of something that no one else could think of. But what we've done and what the real power of this solution is we are able to extend this model because we already have a template to other things. So Internal Revenue in New Zealand do not supply these conformance suites, but we make conformance suites and then we make them fit this structure and it works beautifully. We use it with e-invoicing proofs of concept. We use it with single touch payroll and SuperStream where we also do not have conformance suites to this level of detail, but it allows us a model within which we can construct the tests and run them. So what we have is we have a situation where my dev team and myself, I don't need to be part of the construction of the data that's going in. I don't need to be part of the construction of the tests. A domain professional can read a Gherkin script and can write a Gherkin script. And once we explain what all the little variations are, they can take care of it all themselves. They have no problem doing so. I have yet to meet a BA or a QA who doesn't get this within 5 to 7 minutes of having it explained to them. And then it just takes a few more minutes in order for them to understand all the variations that they can apply to the tests. And then they write their own tests. They submit them to us. There may be typos or whatever, but it is seriously, it's like a 10-minute task to vet a new test suite coming in and then hands off. Okay, so we are Web API 2, so that means that this particular API stack is a .NET stack. So when you're doing BDD and .NET Visual Studio 2015, you are using SpecFlow and SpecRun. They are terrific. There's one drawback. I'll come to it a bit later on, but we have no real complaints. Okay, so what's happening under the bonnet from the perspective of the development team? Obviously, you have to wire something up, and of course, it's all regular expressions. So what this allows us to do is it allows us to define the variables that the domain professionals push into the system, and it allows us to get them to put them in a way that they understand. So what's happening here is it's a tax lodgement, and the BA wants to be able to attach PDF documents in support of an application for an extension or something, right? So just bam. Authentication. It is extraordinarily easy to maintain state in a functional manner, if that makes any sense to you. So what's happening is here we need to represent a user receiving a response from the agency and then updating the subsequent request, and that's super easy. And it also gets down to plumbing. So in this particular case, there is a class of report that comes back from the agency that can take between 5 and 30 minutes to generate. And when we're doing a full journey test all the way to their back end, we need the test system to sit. And we want it to be nice and easy for people to understand how to define that and change it. Okay, so then we can also define the types of responses. So this is a type of ATO response code matching system. If we get a different type of response back, we want to go boom. But it's regular expressions, and you can go completely berserk with regular expressions. And you can see one there that's getting just a little bit hairy. And that's where you can get a disconnect between the BAs and the developers. So this is a whole series of potential issues that can occur. And this one probably needs to be refactored a little bit. Okay, so why are we, I don't know if you're able to see the number of days since last change on some of those signatures. This stuff has been going, the last change, some of it's been a year since we've had to change it, right? It's also really, really easy to introduce new people. MYOB does acquisitions. So when we bring a new company on stream, they go, how the hell are we going to do STP? And we go, it's no problem. We'll come to this a 90-minute talk, and we'll get you going. And it's really easy to bring them in. And they will usually, at the end, they say, my system does this, or I need to be able to supply data to you in this format, and so on. And we have yet to encounter a situation that's been more than a day's work to onboard. So that's super easy. Really, really, really good. Okay, so the downside is that when it's easy and it's too easy, then you're going to have some kind of technical debt. And the technical debt that we have is the code behind on this stuff is out of control. Really, it needs its own test framework, and while internally MYOB has all these metrics on code coverage, 4 minutes. Wow. Nearly done, guys. While internally we have all these metrics on code coverage and so on, this doesn't extend to actual test frameworks, right? And this test framework really needs tests, and then those tests need tests, and those tests need tests, and it gets a little bit crazy. It does need constant refactoring. We don't refactor it constantly. Product managers do not see refactoring the test framework as feature points on their spreadsheets, so that's a bit of a problem. Full run takes nearly 3 hours. That just is what it is. Okay, that's like a third of the suites. It's a big pile of thing. Okay, so now some alternatives, right? And then I'll finish up. So, roll your own DSL. There is no. We've looked. There is no, as far as we can tell, better way to do this kind of getting the different parts of a development team together. And the BAs and the QAs than BDD. I don't know what else you're going to do. You could roll your own DSL, you psychopath, right? And the other one is machine learning, right? And this is where I'm going to finish. I don't think we're going to see the next stage in automated testing is not going to be some new scripting language, some new way to do BDD, DDD, EDD, FDD, or whatever we get next. It will be machine learning. So there is a thing called a convolutional neural network. This thing gets used to classify images. It can see shapes in pictures. It can also see shapes in data. Paired with a thing called a naive Bayes classifier. You don't actually need to use a full Bayesian belief network. A naive classifier works just fine. You can do some pretty frightening things with integration. Now, if you think about it for just a moment, you need data. You need data, and we have vast amounts of data for last year's tax returns, right? So we know what you lodged, we know what the agency came back with. We can train systems to do it. The problem is we can't do it for next year's data. So the outcome is actually your early lodgers will make all these terrible mistakes while we train the system to work over the first few months, and then you lose all your customers and go out of business, and it's not cool, right? However, having said that, things are happening, and they're not just happening in our business, they're happening all over the place, and it is coming, right? We can already see how this stuff works. Not next year, not the year after, but you will start to see things in the accounting industry, and the accounting industry is going to be very badly disrupted very soon. Within 5 years, you're going to see things with classifications of transactions and so on. Tax returns are coming because they're hideous, and really we want to be thinking about other things. So I've got about 20 years left in my career. And there's a really good chance that the culmination of my career will be the extinction of it. And it's a cliche and it sounds like a blah, but you look around and see what people are doing and what we're doing in our hack days and so on, and the potential is extraordinary, but that's where we're going to finish. Okay, I better stop now. Stop. All right, so if we don't have any time for questions, 5 minutes of questions? We have 5 minutes of questions. Okay, I have a light blinding in my face, so I can't see you all that well. So if I'm sort of looking over your head, or I can see the hand. Thank you.
Thanks. So I was actually wondering how each of the test cases that you displayed are hiding behind the inner details. How do you achieve encapsulation?
Okay, so what you're not seeing, right, is, and I'll just back up And I'll back up to one of these. Okay, so you see where we get to the AND test case ID. All right, so what that is that string after that directs us to a file which is written in a format that is familiar to the BA or QA of the system that has defined the test. So there is no magic. All we're doing is we're using BDD as a way to say, you get to stay in your comfort zone. You let us worry about whatever crazy stuff is going on at the agency side, and we do it all in one place rather than do it 20 times. So we allow JSON specifications of tests. We allow ELS tag file specifications of tests. We allow XBRL, XML, flat files. There's a CSV implementation that I will be integrating on Monday with an external. So we also do supplier feeds through this stuff. So if you're an external party and you want to send an invoice to an MYOB ledger user, it goes through our stuff. We're integrating that on Monday in the same way. We just use this as a way to onboard and centralize testing in a way that everybody can play. Okay. Yeah, but there is no magic. Sure.
And did you realize any particular benefits with JSON compared to XML?
So internally, MYOB is REST JSON, OAuth 2, right? And it's just better to code with. It also forces you to be more concise with your data shape. However, having said that, I'm an integrator. I will work with anything. I have to, it's my job. Right? So I'm not going to get too...
Thank you.
How long does it take for the team to reach the 1,000 or like nearly 1,000 test cases? And then like, is there a plan to refactor or like relook at some of the test cases?
Okay, so the vast majority of the test cases are testing scenarios in tax. So as each financial year passes, they become sort of ossified, they're fossilized, right, and set in stone, so they do not change. Where the changes occur is with the newer stuff, where we are constructing more of the rules and the test cases, so with external party partners and so on. And we will go through a phase. So to start off, everything went very, very slowly. So I think we started doing this in 2014. We didn't get very far. 2015 going faster, and now in 2016, like I said, we hand over the toolkit, if you like, to a new player in a day, right? It's that quick. But it did take us 18 months to get to the point where we were able to do that, right? And we do have this horrible code base, yeah?
So you've just mentioned you've got 900 test cases going live. How often do you run all of them when...
Every night.
And how...
At 2 a.m. or something.
And what happens when most of your things fail? What do you go about it?
What happens when they fail? Yeah, so what we actually do, good question, what we actually do is we rotate who's the poor bugger that has to find out what went wrong, right? And because these are system tests, journey tests, API tests, sometimes it's stack plumbing, sometimes the agency goes down. But we have recently had one which was a code change that got through code review, got through the pull request, and was bad, right? And things went wrong, and we had to fix that up. So every day there is a review, right? It's an ongoing, constant process. Once again, there is no magic here, but the question is, what alternative is there? Is there a better way to hang this together? I don't think there is, or at least not in our experience. Maybe someone over the next couple of days will show me otherwise.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrew. Round of applause, please.